Well, here we go. Good morning.
Good morning.
And good morning to everybody who's watching us or listening to us. Ollie, I think we're lucky to be here, aren't we?
You can
With
say
the
that again, yes.
state of what's happening outside in Auckland right now.
It's very damp out there, very damp.
Very damp. Did the car get through okay?
Oh, yes, of course. The water's parted in front.
Well, that's part of the badge that's on the front. That works. So if we get in trouble, let me know. I've got a Jeep at home. I could have come in the Jeep and done the rescue.
Moving right along.
What are you thinking? So we know that there's been some horrible effects of the last 48 hours, whatever it's been since last Friday night. And now if we stay on track and we bring it back to property, what are you thinking as you're going around now with your property hat on, your experience?
Well, it's early days, but by the looks of it, hundreds, if not thousands of houses are going to be badly affected long term. And so there are going to be a lot of people looking for somewhere else to live while their houses are either demolished or rebuilt or the land is sorted out. So there's going to be huge pressure on the rental market. And renters also will be looking. So where these rental properties are going to come from is anybody's guess. And so I think there'll be quite a rush of people looking for alternative space while their places are fixed. And on top of that, people are rushing around as well, trying to replace their fittings and their home contents. And then, of course, there's the insurance problem. Many houses will be underinsured, mightn't be insured at all, and many of the contents of our houses will not be insured, as we know, and people have to go out with nothing and buy all the stuff that they've lost. And you wait, I think there'll be quite a cry.
Isn't that funny? I looked at my own insurance. We all pay a lot for insurance, maybe. Some people pay a lot for insurance. I think I do. And I looked at my contents insurance and I thought, over all the years I've been paying contents insurance, if I hadn't paid for the insurance, hadn't paid the premium, and just put that money in my bank, I could have replaced anything myself anyway, if you'd held on to the money and not spent it. But then this happens, and we see those photos where it's, people are chest deep, so everything in the house is gone, isn't it?
Well, once the water gets into a house, then the house is virtually added because everything gets wet, the walls fall off, the wiring is gone, everything smells, boards bend and twist, steel rusts, equipment goes. So it's a tragedy for these people. I think we're going to hear a lot of horror stories, especially as insurance companies, although they sound all nice and friendly now, they won't be paying out anywhere near as much as people think. There'll be a sort of another Christchurch type event. And I think there'll be quite a cry going up. I'm not surprised. And I wouldn't be surprised if it gets further down the line if litigation doesn't come against developers who put houses in the wrong place, against the city councils who may have given permits for building houses where a flood was known or something like that. And if you look in LIM reports, Land Information Memorandum that goes with every property, there's a section there on flooding.
Yeah, the flood zones.
Flood zones. everybody ignores it up until now.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
It doesn't really matter. I think from now on, the mortgagees, the banks lending on houses, and the insurers looking at will insist that a proper flood report, not only an earthquake report, but a flood report will be required to see if the property is subject to flooding. Real time, because now they've got experience.
Because this will happen. We've got experience now. This will happen again.
And, of course, the premiums will go up for properties. So, folks watching this, if you're looking at buying your place, you get the flood report and look at it carefully and get it properly assessed. So I think the whole dynamics is going to change up and down the country. So I think flood reports and contents insurance will be high on the list.
I know over 20 years from the inside with agents, salespeople, buyers, sellers, the flood zones, everybody was probably critical of the council saying, floods. And owners could put their hand on the heart and say, it's never flooded.
That's right.
Well, I'll tell you what, that changed. That changed on Friday, didn't it?
You're telling me. Yes, you're telling me. There's quite a number in Auckland and other places. There's a lot of creeks and rivulets running through the place. Anyway, this is very early days, and we'll just see how I wouldn't like to be that sharp end of a litigation funder, because I suspect a lot of people are going to get together and take on the councils and the insurance companies and the architects and the people who put on the drains. And how do you clear all the drains? They'll be full of silt.
Yeah.
It's going to take ages.
Yeah.
So I feel very, very sorry for the people who have been affected. Heart goes out to them. It's going to be a tough ride for a while. In 2 weeks, 3 weeks' time, those people not affected will start to forget about this.
Yeah,
but
you're
the
right.
people who
You're
have
right.
been affected, they've got a lifetime, months, not years, of strife in front of them, and it's not good.
Geez, I feel for them. We've all been. I think somebody put it really well on 2022, 2023 is the same. We came into each year tired. It'd been hard going. Yeah. Hard going. Nobody arrived fresh and ready for the challenge. I think everybody came in and go, look, we've had enough. And there you'll have families here who are now homeless. Imagine this, a family that's renting, they haven't got their own home. Now they're kicked out of that.
Right.
And they didn't have contents, and everything they owned is now wet. And they've got to make a decision, what are they going to sleep on and what are they going to wear?
Right. And there's no magic wand going to be waved that hundreds of new rental houses are going to appear on the market. Just the opposite. And the rules out there about rentals, of course, have made things worse, even worse. The new rules that the Majesty's government decided on. So it's not a laughing matter. It's just, a gallows humour.
It's tough.
It's gallows humour.
It's tough. And then also those guys who are renting in there, there's a landlord who owns that, who's now got a property that they're getting no income off, and they've possibly got the home that they're in is in the same position.
Yeah, that's right. Well, we'll see. As the weeks roll by, these little horror stories will come, and I'm sure the news media will make a good job of it. But there we are. This has happened. It's a sort of once-in-a-lifetime event, but it will change the whole way that, I believe, it changed the whole way that property is bought and sold in so far as flood reports and landslip reports and building houses on the edge of cliffs will be no go at the moment.
Oh, boy. I drove in this morning to the gym, past Parnell, looked at those cliffs and thought, boy, I wouldn't want to be up there. That's the first time I've looked up there and thought I didn't want to be up there.
There's always been a sort of in the back of your mind, but now it's in the front of your mind. And so get the view, but get it several hundred metres back from the edge.
Maybe the next street back from the beach has now got greater value than it had last week.
Yes, something on the road.
Ollie, I saw something really good from one of the real estate salespeople. He loves his area. Everybody, if you understand that, people know who I'm talking about. So Steve put out on social media to his clients and anybody there, he said, race outside now and take photos of your property.
Good idea.
Because if you're not flooded, you want these photos when you come to sell to say, remember that flood, this is what we look like. And I thought, well, geez, Steve, what a great idea.
Excellent advice indeed. Very good advice. And good on Steve, and I know you're talking about, for the thing of that. Yes, take photographs of the surroundings and your street and everything else.
Yep.
And put the date on it and say, look, this is how we survived
This is how we looked,
and nothing happened.
Yeah.
Or very little happened.
Yeah. How good's that?
Yeah, but if it is flooded, maybe you lose your camera.
Which is your phone? Maybe the phone fell in the water. So there we go.
What's the phone?
How about this? For some people, it will feel like the end of the world. There'll be despair. For other people, they're wondering if it's the end of the world, but we've literally had this before. Maybe it's not floods, but if we're thinking property and we're thinking New Zealand, we're thinking markets, how many times have you seen the end of the world and the chaos, and how far back?
Well, right back to the 1960s. Sorry about that, folks.
What happened in the 1960s? I thought that was the golden age. I thought it was all good.
Oh, don't you believe it, mate. There was a wool crisis. New Zealand couldn't sell its wool, and it was a huge economic knockback. The wool was stocked, and that was to do with the Korean War at the time, not requiring wool. But the Korean War ended, and wool wasn't required so much to make uniforms.
Yeah, okay.
And Britain, I think, joined the common market or something like that, and all the trade changed, and suddenly we had so much wool, we didn't know what to do with it. I think you've got some left, but there we are. And moving right along.
Hey, leave my hair alone, please.
It's an explosion in a mattress factory.
Explosion in a mattress factory.
I mean that lovingly.
Thank you.
Compared. Moving right along to the 1970s, there was the oil crisis.
I remember this as a kid.
That's right. There was a big rise in property prices in the early 70s. The socialist government at the time, we mentioned it last week, came out with all sorts of rules trying to hit speculators. We covered that last time. And then the oil crisis came. And that was a major when oil prices went up to $140 US a barrel in a time when petrol used to be, 10 cents a litre.
Wow.
I think. And that brought a major recession here, and a major recession in the late 70s. And then the Labor government was tossed out.
Because I remember that one there, Ollie. If I've got that right, I remember watching on TV big American cars, thinking, geez, it'd be nice to have one of those cars. And we had our little car living in Rotorua, and it had a sticker on the windscreen which said which days we could either drive or not drive. And then looking back, you imagine doing that today, saying, I'll tell you what, you're not going to drive these days. And like,
the craziest, one of the crazy systems that came out was carless days, where you got the sticker. You could choose which days you wouldn't drive your car. Say Monday, Wednesday, and Saturday, say. So you got the sticker with that said. So what people did, they got a second car and chose other dates. So they just swapped from one car to the other and carried on. I mean, it just shows you bad laws don't work. We mentioned that last week.
Yeah.
It just shows you all sorts of other silly things. So that crisis came and went. It was tough at the time.
Yeah.
And so on, moving on to the 80s, then we had the share market crash, which bowled over lots of companies, and the Bank of New Zealand even collapsed.
And again, I remember watching that on the news. I was a soldier at that stage, so we had no money, so it didn't affect us. We had no shares.
But it would have affected you somewhere.
It was dramatic watching what was happening. And BNZ,
BNZ nearly fell over. I think it was taken over by a private company and came back. Can't remember the details. And big building companies fell over, and it was disaster, and unemployment went up. Then moving on to where are we now? In the 1990s, we had the Asian crisis. Everybody's forgotten that. The Asian crisis was a financial crisis in Asia. Didn't affect us that much, but there were Asian people here who were affected, and many properties came on the market owned by these good people. And some of us took advantage of that, helped them out by buying it off them. And then Australia.
So you were shopping in that market?
Yep. I bought a big blocks of shops from panicking Asians at good prices. Sorry about that, but there we go. And then came the GFC in 2008. And that again was a worldwide event. And I remember going on to TV at the time and saying that it won't affect New Zealand as much as other countries because we're not so so deep in it. And it was correct in the end. And so moving on, where are we now? We're still at the tail end of that GFC because money became cheaper and cheaper. In the end, money became so cheap that it was the lowest interest rates in 5,000 years until recent times, and now we're paying for it.
Quite interesting, isn't it? Because you can look back at those events and you can now, say we take the BNZ back in 87, I think it was. And then we pull it forward to today and you can see why now the banks and the Reserve Bank are so playing the game safe and keeping their margins protected as they come through. As I look at the property market right now, it does feel like the GFC. It's a pretty deep dip, and it feels like it's been a long ride already. So we were just working out how that flattens. But Ollie, there was, some of those markets. You talked about the Asian crisis. There was an opportunity there for you to buy, and other people to take those funds. So in each of those markets, I guess, did it feel pretty, obviously, tough at the time?
It feels tough, and everybody feels it. And it's. I don't want to sound like I took advantage of other people's misery. Never did that. But the fact that these people were stuck, and their house prices had dropped, or their business had collapsed, and so forth. Well, you're doing a good job helping them out. You can't help it. But I tried not to sort of gloat over it. It's not the way to do things. But over a long period of time, buying in the dips is the rule. Buying in the dips. But you've got to be brave. Because there's a major crisis out there. You feel it too. Just like 9/11. We've forgotten that one.
Oh, 9/11.
9/11. That was a major. And we all lost our confidence. And you have to be very brave to go against the tide. Not easy. You can do it. But you have to you have to have kahunas.
And there'd be markets in there when you talk about you'd feel the stress of it. There'd be markets in there where you'd have a pretty big portfolio, so you'd have to be careful yourself. Well,
if you had a portfolio of properties, commercial properties especially, losing tenants who were affected by whatever and having vacancies, this is also a nightmare. And if your mortgagee screaming. and your value is dropping, and the mortgagee starts revaluing your property and saying it's gone down in value.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yep.
And now getting back to today, I repeat that I think we'll have the mortgagees insisting, that is the banks insisting, that flood reports be given, will be required before you buy a property. You have to have some proof that it's not going to be flooded, and that will also apply to insurance companies. So all this is going to change. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's all going to get tighter. If I think about GFC and commercial, at that stage, we had an office in High Street in the city. And literally every morning when you came in, there was a new vacant retailer on High Street. Yeah.
I was lucky in that I didn't have the problem. That was luck, not cleverness, my part, luck. But all these the problem with all these disasters, you're going to get a lot of do-gooders coming out and blaming this, that, and the other, and the landlords that get blamed again, the commercial and the resident for not providing accommodation for those in need when they can't. But they'll be blamed anyway because there's always that big bunch of guitar strumming, muesli chewing, barefooted tree huggers out there who have to blame somebody. so watch out, folks. We're going to have that bunch of people coming out from under the rocks and telling us how bad we are, and especially if you're in the real estate market. Control yourself, boy. Control yourself.
Do you think they'll be picking on all of us now? Well, they do, don't they? But there we go.
That's right.
Okay, so we've been there before. Today is very tough in Auckland. It's been a very tough weekend. We've seen that. Condolences for the families. They've paid the ultimate price in those cases. And I think there's a lot of stress with people with whether it's houses, furnitures, cars, or lifestyles.
That's right. Lots of people lost their cars. Many of them aren't insured. There'll be fights with the insurance company, I guarantee. The insurance companies are saying we're here to help. But when it comes to the dollars, they'll be quite tough. And people expect more from insurance companies, and insurance companies don't cover. I've had huge fights with insurance companies. I could sit here the rest of the morning telling you the fights I've had with insurance companies. But, that's the way it is.
So there might be another one for as Steve said, for the owners that have got a property that's weathered well, take the photos, retain the record. And obviously for somebody in that situation, if it's the other side of it, get all the photos. Photos here, photos once you've stripped the walls off, photos once the carpet's up, photos if you've got those timber floors, if they've popped, which we're already hearing about.
Quite right. If you've been seriously damaged, again, record it when it's happening. So there's no argument later on. By the time the insurance company gets there, it'll be some weeks before they do the assessment, months in fact, and there'll be an argument about how badly it was damaged. Yeah. You've got the evidence there.
So no use having it all cleaned up and everything was in a jumbo bin and gone. Keep the evidence. I think great advice there. Let's, I appreciate that. Let's jump in. If we can talk about, and there's going to be people that are settling on property, so that's one aspect. But then there's an aspect of settlement. So if you're about to settle on a property, it can be a smart move, depending what you're doing with the property, to try and get that access earlier.
Just before we get there, talking about people who are in the middle of settlement, I wonder how many people might try to avoid settling on a property now because of flood risks. If a bit of the land has fallen away, a bit of the house is tipped over, and then they've made an unconditional offer, but they want to pull out of it now. There's a job for the lawyers. There's a big job.
Absolutely. You've got my brain ticking over now on the clause of risk and insurance prior to settlement and tenantable and untenantable.
Act of God.
There we go.
That's right.
Oh, that's interesting.
That's right. So this is all coming. I touched. Well, have we got time for prior access?
Yeah, well, sorry, now my brain's spinning. So Leslie's going to be flat out. I'm going to talk to our compliance officer after this.
I've worried you. I got this.
We better get that clause out and study it. All the lawyers will be, no doubt. We have prior access. Your thoughts?
Well, this is a completely different subject, but if you're buying a property and you make it unconditional and you're just waiting to settle, often there's 3, 4, 5, 6, 8 weeks gap. Nothing happening.
Yep.
And it's very frustrating for buyers. They're sitting there, they've got their plans, what they want to do to the property, and they've got all sort of ideas, and they're sitting there week after week, can't do anything. So when you make an offer on the place, no harm in asking, no crime to ask, you may not get, but try, is ask the vendor who's selling to you, can you have prior access to the property between your unconditional date and they're moving out?
Yep.
Things like, can we go in prior access and do the garden or the front fence? Can we paint the house? Can we paint the roof? Can we remodel the garage? Whatever it needs, you get a lot of the work done without actually getting into the mess yourself, you see.
Yep.
And so you see, I've done that quite a number of times. It saves a lot of time. It's easier to do. And you can see the owners sitting in the house with their eyes as big as saucers as things sort of magically appear happening around them. And with a bit of luck, you sometimes even get internal access, especially if the house is empty.
Yep.
And so you have access to the interior. And then you can remodel the kitchens and the bathrooms before you've paid for the place. Much easier because you don't have to live in the mess, you see. And it happens.
And I guess you can do that twofold. As you say, if you're moving in, you don't have to live in the mess. Yeah. But equally, if it is a property that's going into your portfolio and you're going to put tenants in there, you've reduced the downtime and the loss of income.
Absolutely. It's magic. And especially if the place is empty.
Yep.
But you may, if the price is right, it's worth paying a few dollars more to get that prior access. And I know sometimes the people sitting in the house don't sort of appreciate how much what's going to happen around their ears as you renovate the interior. But, that's why they know they're going. It doesn't matter. So it's a big time saver, and you don't have to live in the mess that's happening. And I've used that many times. I've painted the house, I've painted the roof, I've even painted the house next door because the house next door needed painting.
I know what you mean.
Well, it's no use having a nice house here and the dump next door. You paint that one up as well. And you get the gardens done and the fences and everything else. And that's a big time saver. And so you walk into it, it's half done.
That's a great tip. And that's the sort of thing is you share what you've done there and somebody can think about it. And normally we're thinking about the inside and is it vacant, but the outside and doing the painting. I remember selling a house in the early days in Blockhouse Bay. As we went through the house, it was great for what it was. And I thought, what a great house. And it had a view, but right in front of you was the scruffy old roof of the house next door. When they asked, what should we do? I said, go and ask the neighbour if you can paint their roof.
That's right.
And that improved the view as such as you went through.
Oh, yes, that's
great tip.
Done that. It's another half a day's work and you make a big difference. But it can work against you because I bought an apartment in Australia. Have you told this before? I bought an apartment in Australia many years ago, and I bought it off just brand new. And I didn't do my due diligence. When I saw all those gabbling real estate agents in Australia, and they're far worse than you lot. And when I went back and checked it 2 years later, a great big building was put up in front of it. Oh. This is in Bondi Beach, and the whole view is gone. So there's no way you could have told that. So I lost a lot of money. Well, I didn't lose any money, but I didn't get the money I would like to.
Yeah.
So you've got to watch out as things happen and keep your eye open.
Better disclosure now if everybody gets it right, and better recourse now if everybody gets it right. So, excellent. All right. Well, I think we're if we look out, it looks smiled. I'm brave enough to get out there and not get beaten to death by my hair. So, I think we should.
You won't feel it. You won't feel it. You've got a portable tent.
Impervious to the weather.
Right.
If I get this wet, it adds another 3 kgs.
Well, it helps.
Excellent, Ollie. Thank you for your time. Thank you for your tips. And thank you for taking us back and giving us those insights into what had happened in the past.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Shoot.